so honored to be here as part of the closing ceremony of the Subiendo program. I understand you guys had, since Sunday, a full agenda and had a lot of activities that I hope you're gonna be able to take with you and use as you go along your journey, hopefully to higher education and then on to a successful professional career. She said, I had your 4 kids in my class, she says. They're good kids. They seem to like school very well. She said, you need to look at your kids as trees. And she used the agricultural angle because that's what we were. We were farm workers. She said, you ought to view your kids as trees. It says, what happens when you keep transplanting a tree continuously? It says, the roots never take hold. The tree is going to grow short, stunt growth, and weak. It says, you need to stay in one place to make sure that those roots grow deep, branches grow big and strong, and you have big, strong trees. It says, that's what you need to do. And my dad and mom, who only have a 3rd grade elementary education, took that to heart. I got to give them credit. They took that to heart because after that year, we still went to Mexico that year, but after that year, funny thing happened. Instead of going through the three or four different areas in San Joaquin Valley, we came back straight to Stockton. We started making Stockton our home. Our 3 months trips to Mexico started to shrink to 3 weeks centered around Christmas. So we missed very little school. And that's when our education started to get traction. And so a lot of people always say, okay, well, I come from a family that's very poor. I come from a family that doesn't have the resource. I come from a family where my parents don't even speak English. And that's not an excuse for you not to excel and push yourself. And I'll tell you why. Because my parents, in spite of the fact that we were migrant farm workers and we had low income and they spoke very little English, they always emphasized education. I mean, they walked the talk in a sense. Every Saturday, Monday through Friday we were in school, but every Saturday and Sunday we were working hand in hand with my parents in the fields, picking cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever was in season. And while kids loved summer vacation, the Hernandez kids dreaded it because that meant we had to work 7 days a week in the fields, and we hated that, and we didn't want to do that. But my dad and mom always provided these anecdotes for us to push us and to make us think as to what we were going to be doing. Because my mom always talked in the sense of, she would never say, I hope, ojalá mi hijo grows up to be an engineer or a doctor, ojalá esto. She never said that. She didn't say, I hope. She never said that. She said, when you go to college, when you become a doctor, when you become an engineer. She ingrained that in us desde pequeños, and it became an expectation on our part. My mom, every day after school, when we came home, in la cocina, in the kitchen table, we would be sitting while she made fresh tortillas and arroz and frijolitos for us to eat. We would be doing our homework, and we weren't allowed to get up until we finished our homework. Then we can go out and play with friends or watch TV. I still remember los cinturazos that I got when I lied one time, that I did my homework and I actually didn't. No me quedaron ganas after that. I wanted to make sure that I told the truth after that because I remembered the belt whipping I got for that. My mom would also, we would go to a bank, for example. We would go to a bank and we would walk into a nice air-conditioned bank in the middle of summer, nice and cool. And my mom would see a gentleman like Mr. Powers here, very finely dressed, with a suit and tie. And she would grab my sleeve, I'm in my torn Levi's, torn tennis shoes, and she says, what do you see there? And I said, well, I see a man. She said, no. This is, yo te veo a ti. I see you. This is how I want to see you when you grow up. I want to see you working in an office, wearing a suit and tie, and working with your brain. It says, your body can only take so much, and your body's going to break down sooner than your mind is, she says. So you don't want to work in physical labor. Work with your mind. Be smart about it and dress like that. And those were the type of messages that she gave me. My dad was did it in a different way. He did it more of a kind of like tough love kind of way. I remember one day, we came home. We were coming home from working in the fields picking cucumbers. I don't know if you guys know how you pick cucumbers, but you always wear Levi's because you want to protect yourself from your knees and stuff like that. And in the morning when you go out there, the fields are freshly irrigated, and you get mud all over yourself. Then the sun comes up and the mud bakes into your Levi's, so now you got stiff Levi's on, right? I remember we used to go home, and we used to carefully take off, the kids would carefully take off their Levi's, see who could stand them up the most. And that was the badge of honor for us, It says, whoever could have it the stiffest era el más fregón, right? Was the guy that, to us, worked the hardest. They didn't know I was the youngest one, so I rolled around in the mud, and I always won that competition, but never won the quantity of buckets of cucumbers we picked because I was too small. But I remember one day we got out of work. We were like that. We got in the back of the car. We're tired, sweaty, and muddy in the face everywhere. And my dad was adjusting he got in the car, and he was adjusting the rear mirror, and he must have saw us and saw all four of us there looking tired. And he turned around and he said, ¿Cómo se sienten? He looked at each one of us, right in the eye. He said, "How do you guys feel?" And of course, I'm the youngest one and the one that probably talks back the most to them. And I said, "Pues cansados, tired. How do you expect us to feel?" And he said, "That's good." He says, "I'm glad you feel this." He says, "Remember this feeling," he says. He says, "because you guys have the distinct privilege of living your future now." And I was like 8, 9 years old at the time. I said, "Living my future now." I said, "The old man got too much sun out there in the field." That's what I figured. I said, "¿Cómo que viviendo el futuro ahora?" He said, "Explain to me that." He says, "Yeah." He says, "I'm not going to force you guys to go to school. I'm not going to force you to get good grades. But if you don't, this is your future. This is what you will be destined to do. This is what your mom and I were destined to do, and this is your future." He says, "What's more, you could stop going to school now and work with us 7 days a week." So I won't object to that. And I said, "Whoa, hold on. Let's not get too hasty here. I think I'm beginning to like school." And so those were the tough love messages that my parents gave us. And like I said, it doesn't, resources, money is not everything in terms of getting a good education or having your parents provide for you in a good education, for a good education. It's more the moral support. It's more of walking the talk in terms of encouraging them. It's more being there with them when it's time to do their homework and ensuring it. And it's not about watching the novelas or going out with the friends and drinking beer. It's more being with the kids and being engaged and involved. And that's what happened to us. So that's how our education started to get traction. Now, a lot of people always say, "Okay, well, that's fine and dandy, but how did a migrant farm working kid become an astronaut? How was that? How did you do that?" I would watch in amazement at how Gene Cernan was bouncing around in the moon, talking to Mission Control Houston, and then I would go outside. It was nighttime, it was a full moon, and I would see the moon out there. Come back inside, see the surface of the moon on TV and Gene Cernan there, and I just couldn't believe it. I said, "Wow, we have humans 250,000 miles away on the surface of the moon." I said, "How cool is that?" At that point, that's when I knew, all 9 years of me knew that I wanted to be an astronaut. I said, "This is what I want to do. I want to be an astronaut." And so the great thing that I did when I decided that was that I shared that with my parents. And my dad, when I shared that with my parents, my dad sat me down at that same kitchen table where my mom made us do our homework, and he said, a ver, ¿que quieres ser astronauta? You want to be an astronaut? And I said, yes. He must have saw the determination in my eyes, because he said, "I believe you can do it." He says, "You just have to follow a simple recipe." And I'll share this recipe with you guys because I think it's so important. He said, 5 simple ingredients, he said. First, he says, decide what you want to be in life. What is it that Jose wants to be in life? I said, okay, I want to be an astronaut. That's easy. I'm halfway there, I figured. Second, he says, recognize where you're at right now, how far you are from that goal. I said, well, I'm a migrant farm worker kid, right? It's pretty far. It's like, I'm glad you recognize that, son. Because the third step is very important. You draw yourself a roadmap from where you understand where you're at to where you understand where you want to go. And outline every step to get there, it says. And don't jump steps, because you can still get there, but you won't be as well prepared. So don't take shortcuts, was the moral of that story. Draw yourself a roadmap and don't take shortcuts. Fourth, he said, you're doing it right now. Get yourself a good education. Educate yourself. Get yourself a good education. I can't emphasize that. Fifth and final, he said, is that same work ethic you put out in the field picking cucumbers, so you put it in your books. And when you graduate college, you put it in your job. You work hard all the time, not just sometimes, all the time. He says you mix all that, Jose, and you could be whatever you want, because you're here in the United States, land of opportunity, and you can reach the American dream. And I took that hook, line, and sinker. I believed it, and I lived by it, and I think the only thing I would add to it would be perseverance, because as James indicated, I didn't get selected the first time, the second time, or the third time. I got selected the 12th time. NASA told me no 11 times. Imagine what would have happened if I would have given up the first, second, or third time. I would never be here telling you the story. I would have never went up to the heavens, would have never went up to the International Space Station. You can't give up. You just have to make sure you apply smart perseverance. And what's smart perseverance? Smart perseverance is the fact that when I applied, I wouldn't feel sorry for myself for failing, and I wouldn't do anything before it was the next time to apply. I would say a class of astronauts would get selected, and I would study and say, what do they have that I don't have? One year I found out that all of them were pilots. I wasn't a pilot. Guess what? I learned how to fly. Another year, when another class got selected, I found out that they were all scuba divers. Guess what? I wasn't a scuba diver. I got scuba rated in Monterey, California. Basic scuba, advanced scuba, scuba rescue, first aid scuba, all kinds of scuba certification. I was a fish in the water. I wanted to make sure that they knew I know how to scuba dive. Then one year, a job came up in the nuclear non-proliferation arena that took me to Russia. I had read a month before that Russia and the United States signed an agreement to build the International Space Station. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out we were going to be working up in space with the Russians. And this job took me to Russia. I didn't accept the job because I wanted to get to know the Russian Siberian countryside. I took the job because it justified my employer, Department of Energy and Lawrence Livermore Lab, to give me a personal Russian instructor so that I can learn Russian. Я понимаю по-русски язык. So I learned conversational Russian enough to, I always say enough to get drunk in Russia. So I do know, I do know how to ask for beer and things of that nature. Survival phrases is what I call it. And so it's improving myself each time to make myself more attractive. And that's when I got selected to be an astronaut. After 12 tries and making all these changes in my life, in 2004, I got selected part of the 19th class of astronauts. And in 2006, we finished astronaut training. 2008, I got assigned to a mission to the STS-128 Space Shuttle Discovery, going to the International Space Station, of all things. Myself and 6 other crewmates, 7 of us. One of them was a fellow colleague, lady engineer, Nicole Stott. She was also a part of my crew. Another one was Christer Fuglesang, a Swedish astronaut. So it was an international mission, and we flew up. 7 of us flew up to the International Space Station, and up there waiting for us were 6 astronauts. And the commander was Gennady Padalka, a Russian, so my Russian did come in handy, and we were up there. One thing, just to do a full loop on the story with Mrs. Young, we were allowed to invite about 100 guests to the launch. I made sure that the school district looked her up. She had just retired, and she was standing next to my parents when we blasted off into space. So I think that was a pretty neat story to sort of come full circle.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.